The Israeli army has officially launched a ground operation in Gaza. What many had called impossible has now become reality. Tank columns, bulldozers, and special forces have entered the city, and this is no longer about pinpoint strikes or short raids. It is a full-scale offensive. The government in Tel Aviv has declared the goal is complete occupation of the territory and the destruction of all structures connected to Hamas. This statement instantly changed the rhetoric of the world's media. Headlines are filled with words like storm, clearance, occupation, and there is a sense in the air that we are witnessing an event that will go down in the history books. For Gaza's residents, all of this looks like the end of their familiar world. Neighborhoods that just yesterday were full of life are turning into ruins. Streets are littered with slabs of concrete, broken shop windows, and overturned cars. Where people once hurried to work or school in the morning, battles are now raging. Drones buzz overhead, tanks crush barricades, and special forces search house by house, hunting for resistance fighters. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have found themselves trapped. Those who manage to escape form massive columns of refugees moving toward the borders. But the borders are tightly sealed, forcing people to remain along the roadsides, in improvised camps without proper food, water, or medicine. International humanitarian organizations are sounding the alarm. Food stocks are running out, hospitals are overwhelmed, and electricity is being cut off more frequently. At this moment, the crisis ceases to be local. The global economy instantly reacts. Oil prices climb. Traders fear that instability in the region could disrupt supply routes. Gas prices spike, especially in Europe, where dependence on energy remains acute. Stock markets tremble, shares of energy giants surge, while airlines and logistics companies tumble. Western politicians act predictably. The US and Europe express unconditional support for Israel. Biden delivers a tough statement, pledging assistance to the ally and condemning Hamas. In the European Union, words of solidarity are heard, and military cargo is already being dispatched to the region. American warships strengthen their presence in the Mediterranean, signaling readiness to intervene if the situation spirals out of control. But behind the loud words lies something else: fear. In private conversations, diplomats admit escalation in Gaza could trigger a chain reaction across the entire Middle East. That means a new energy crisis, rising food prices, falling global currencies, and yet another wave of migration into Europe. In ministerial offices and at closed meetings, the word crisis is heard more and more often, and experts warn, if the conflict drags on, the consequences could rival the upheavals of the Arab Spring and even Iraq. And it is against this backdrop, burning Gaza, soaring prices, and market panic, that another, no less important story unfolds. A story in which the figure of Donald Trump appears. His statement becomes not just news, but a true political earthquake. While explosions rock Gaza, the world anxiously follows the streams of refugees and the swings in oil prices. On the other side of the planet comes a statement many call shocking. Donald Trump, a man used to speaking loudly and directly, suddenly utters a phrase that shifts the balance of power. Isolating Russia is pointless. Without Moscow, no global crisis can be solved. These words are picked up by every major global media outlet. For some, it is a blow to all of Western policy in recent years. For others, it is a long-awaited truth that many had been afraid to say out loud. For years, Washington and Brussels have built an entire architecture of isolating Russia. Sanctions, restrictions, diplomatic barriers. And Trump tears this structure down with a single sentence. The question now is this: if tomorrow Trump returns to the White House, what will happen to this entire policy? Europe has spent billions restructuring its energy market, turning away from Russian gas and oil, finding new suppliers, building LNG terminals. And now it may turn out that the US will no longer insist on isolating Moscow. All of Europe's efforts could prove futile. For Putin, Trump's statement sounds like a long-awaited gift. The Kremlin has always played the long game. The logic is simple: endure sanctions, withstand the blows, survive isolation, and then wait for the moment when the world itself realizes it cannot manage without Russia. And it seems that moment has arrived. Trump effectively rehabilitates Putin in the eyes of global politics. He ceases to be seen solely as a toxic leader, unfit to sit at the same table. On the contrary, The idea emerges: without Moscow, there can be no solution for the Middle East, for Ukraine, or for the energy crisis. At this moment, Putin ceases to be an outcast and once again becomes a player who cannot be ignored. And business instantly picks up on the signal. Investors begin making forecasts. If isolation weakens, Russia will re-enter commodity markets, oil and gas will return to global deals, and companies will reap billions in profits. On financial markets, talk is already spreading that if Trump returns to the White House, a new surge of growth could begin in Russian-linked energy assets. But that is not all. Trump's words carry not only economic weight but geopolitical calculation. He is effectively proposing a new world order. Strong leaders must sit at the same table and negotiate directly. In this model, the US and Russia once again share a common interest: managing crises. For Europe, this is a real threat. The EU has poured vast resources into fencing itself off from Moscow. But if Washington changes course, Brussels is trapped. Either it continues pressuring Russia alone, or it follows Washington's lead and accepts Putin's return to the international arena. Either way, Europe's stability suffers. And here lies the most intriguing part. On the one hand, Israel is at war in Gaza, and global leaders speak of humanitarian disaster. On the other, Trump initiates Russia's return to big politics. The paradox is clear. While one part of the world burns, in another, a behind-the-scenes global deal is being built, in which Putin once again becomes a key piece on the chessboard. When the world talks about Gaza, the focus is usually on tragedy: ruined homes, streams of refugees, children's cries among the rubble. But behind this picture lies something much larger. The war in Gaza is only part of a vast global puzzle, where not just the fate of the Middle East, but the entire world order is at stake. Look at how quickly everything changes. Just yesterday, Putin was an outcast, with whom Western leaders demonstratively refused to deal. He was not invited to summits, no negotiations were held with him, and a wall of sanctions was built around Russia. And today, one man in America, with political weight and a chance to return to the White House, is effectively opening the way back for him. Trump did not simply say that isolating Russia is pointless. He set the tone for a new era. In this era, the rules established after the Cold War no longer apply. It no longer matters who is the proper ally and who is the toxic player. The only thing that matters is whether a leader can take the hit and influence global crises. For Putin, this is a tremendous opportunity. He gains what he has sought for years: recognition that the world cannot do without Russia. This automatically turns him from pariah into partner. And even if Europe resists, the very fact that the US under Trump is ready to change course upends the entire game. Business, as always, is the first to sense the shift in the wind. Already, discussions are underway that if Washington's rhetoric changes, Russian oil and gas could once again be integrated into global deals. Traders see this as a chance to make a fortune. Large corporations are preparing for a scenario in which sanctions will either be eased or bypassed through new schemes. But there is another side to this coin. If Russia returns to global politics through Trump, it becomes a challenge not only for Europe, but also for China. Beijing has grown accustomed to Moscow's isolation, relying on Russia's dependence to strengthen their alliance. But if Putin gains alternatives, new channels to the US and global markets, the balance of power could shift. China would lose part of its leverage, posing risks to its entire Asian strategy. Thus, the war in Gaza is not just a regional conflict. It is the backdrop for a global deal where the future of the world is being decided. Israel storms Gaza. Europe fears an energy crisis. The US braces for Trump's potential return, and Russia suddenly becomes part of the big game again. The world seems to be entering an era of strongman leaders. Negotiations will not run through institutions or diplomacy, but directly, leader to leader, fist to fist. Putin, Trump, perhaps Xi Jinping. It is they who will decide what tomorrow looks like. This is a return to hard politics, where the rules are written by those who have strength and willpower. But here is the main question that lingers in the air. Is all this a path to peace or a road to catastrophe? If the strong leaders come to terms, the world may gain a long-awaited respite, albeit at the cost of compromise. But if they begin bargaining over spheres of influence, forgetting ordinary people, we are heading toward the new world war. And then today's events in Gaza will seem like only the prologue to far greater upheavals. So the choice lies with the leaders. but the consequences are for all of us. For everyone who turns on the news in the morning, for every family counting prices at the store, for every country hoping tomorrow will not bring a new wave of crises. And here is the ultimate question for you, the viewer. Are we standing on the threshold of peace or on the brink of war? And will humanity pay too high a price just so the strong leaders can strike deals once again?